Wow. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I am really excited to be bringing this interesting new topic to you all. I have been interested in this technology for a long time, and when the possibility that it might show promise for our community came about, I was more than happy to jump on it and to, um, you know, bring us to a stage where we can see if this has promise for people with Down syndrome. But before we get into talking about that, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Liz Corcoran, and I am the chair of the Down Syndrome Research Foundation. We are the UK's medical research charity. We exist to help improve the quality of life for people with Down syndrome through their whole lifespan. We're interested in helping all sorts of people with Down syndrome. And we want to actually bring all of this technology and advances that has helped other people with other conditions. We want that technology to be able to benefit our community as well. So, one of the things that we are committed to doing is showing you guys the amazing people that are out there doing research in the world today, and in particular, doing research into topics and areas that benefit our community. So one of the things we, are doing is to do these researcher chats. So I am bringing you a researcher who is based over in America today. We've spoken to lots of British researcher, but I'm excited to bring to you today a researcher that is working across the pond. So, just to, I suppose, fill you in into a little my background, I have a brother with Down syndrome. He is an adult. He's turning 40 very soon. We shall have a very big party to celebrate that. And I understand, as many of our people who support research, the particular challenges that people with Down syndrome face as they work so hard throughout their lives to do therapies, to do education, to work hard at integration. And to then have these struggles with health and difficulties. It's just such a shame to have all of that hard earned independence lost through something simple such as a health condition that isn't properly treated. So I understand intimately the things that happen to people in our community, and I hope that it makes me all the better of helping you guys to hear about the best research that's out there so that you guys can begin to get interested in research and fund research. So that's a bit about me. My background is I'm also a doctor as well as the chair of the foundation. So I've got that as well, that colors my understanding a little bit about what is out there and what's needed. So let me introduce this really interesting chap that's joining me today, Dr. Paolo Cassano. You are a psychiatrist out of Harvard Medical School, but also a director of something called photobiomodulation at Massachusetts General Hospital. And you're going to be telling us more about what that is in time. But you've got lots of experience through psychiatry of lots of different conditions that people have, mental health problems, things like that. But also, you're interested in people with neurodevelopmental disorders as well. So you've got this broad range of experience throughout your training, and it has also led you down this additional route to learn about this new technology. So I'm so excited to have you here with me today. Hi, Paolo. It's lovely to have you here.
Hi, Liz. Thank you so much for having me today. And hi to everybody in this platform. It's so exciting to be here and to talk about these research opportunities that are coming. Thank you to the Down Syndrome Research Foundation in UK.
Oh, it's brilliant to be able to support research in wherever it's happening, but particularly to support this type of research because there's not many places that are studying what we're going to talk about today. So we're really lucky that you chose Down syndrome to be one of the areas that you began to look into next. So let's start by thinking a little bit about. I mentioned this gigantic word a minute ago, photobiomodulation. And this is this new technology. I said to you earlier, I didn't want to put it in the title because I thought, people are going to say this is going to be way too sciencey. I'm not going to understand it. But just define for us, what is photobiomodulation? What is that?
Well, Liz, I'll start saying this is that we are constantly under the light. And if we think about the sunlight, 50% of the sunlight is made of infrared light, and 30% is that infrared light that really helps our brain. And so photobiomodulation is a big fancy word to just say that we are going to use the same type of light that is found in nature, but this time we're going to use it to rejuvenate, stimulate our brain. And so we're modulating brain function with photons, so with light. So that's all what it's about.
Okay, so the modulation bit means that we can change our brain function through the use of light technology. And I mean, we're going to say the word light, but we're not talking about like a lamp, are we? We're talking about a special kind of light, aren't we?
Right. These are non-visible or invisible lights. So it's a light below the visible. So it's not a regular lamp. It's not your winter sad lamp. It's a specific lamp that sheds invisible light.
Okay, okay. So tell us, I mean, this idea that someone kind of discovered that this special kind of light, this certain wavelength, could do anything to the human body. How did anyone even discover that this was a thing?
Yes, so actually, this discovery goes back to the 60s, believe it or not. And it was discovered in animals, in mice first, that kind of a very serendipitous way, people turned their laser too low in their lab, and they found that the hair were growing fast. And they were thinking, okay, what's going on with this light here? What's this about? And for a long time, people didn't make too much out of it. But in the past 20 years, there's been a lot of interest and a lot of studies in brain and understanding that you could regrow neurons, so brain cells, that you could help them to connect, to transmit information and survive despite all type of toxic stimuli. And in the past 10 years in particular, we've gone out to treat many patients with stroke, with traumatic brain injury, with depression, with Parkinson. And although this has not reached the level of approval yet for any of this condition, there's really a lot of hope and a lot of interest, also because it's a very safe intervention.
Okay, so we've gone from like these researchers in the '60s just sort of accidentally discovering that this sort of light stimulated growth, and to now people realizing that actually, well, first of all, I think the thing that when I talk about it with people is how like they can't quite believe that when you shine like this special light it can get into the brain. So we do know from research it actually does reach deep into the brain, which is kind of amazing. To actually then realizing this is amazing potential to you mentioned some of the things it does. It seems to repair, causes repair mechanisms to begin, triggers them in the brain.
Yes, it does have many different effects. And yes, it penetrates. We have to realize that a very small amount of this light penetrates, maybe 1 or 2%. But that is enough to deliver, at least to the surface of our brain, an amount of energy that is equivalent to what has been seen in animal models to produce those beneficial effects on the brain. Mm-hmm. And those beneficial effects, as I mentioned before, are many. So it's about preservation of neurons from cellular death. It's also about a decrease in inflammation, which can cause brain damage. Mm-hmm. It's also decrease in oxidative stress, which also can cause brain damage. Increase in what we call synapses, connections in between neurons. Then when you go from what you see at the microscope and to what you see as a whole brain, then you realize that there are all sort of other beneficial effects, more blood flow to the brain, which means more oxygenation. There is more brain electrical activity recorded with EEGs. All those waves that are fast, which are the waves that show more engagement from our thinking, from our memory. So there's more connectivity, more connection, more exchange of information between different areas of the brain. So many beneficial effects, whether you look at the microscope or you look at the whole brain.
Okay. So, just for the people who are not maybe neurologists out there, why does it matter that those brain cells stay connected? What does it sort of, what does it matter to someone?
Absolutely. So I'll say from a metaphor perspective, we know that when we connect with people, when we have friends, when we have a social network, we live better, and we actually age better. We maintain more brain power. It's not too different when you get to the microscopic level and when you look at those neurons or when you look at those brain areas. Really connecting means that the brain is engaged, with the meaning that there is exchange of information. That means like the brain is active. And similarly to the muscle, when you keep your brain active, you keep the function, you keep, yourself over
Okay.
time.
Okay. So all the things the brain does, I suppose a lot of us just think it's all about like memories, like that movie, the Pixar movie where, you lose those core memories. It's more, the brain does more than just hold those memories like a library, right? It helps us to chew and swallow and to move and to remember how to throw a ball and all of the things that let us be human, right? So it's all of those neurons too.
I love Inside Out. I've watched it so many times, and I still learn a lot by watching it.
It's on the medical school curriculum, isn't it?
It should be if it isn't.
Definitely on the psychiatry curriculum, it should be. Yeah. Yeah. So, when we think about just your average person, everyone, not just someone with Down syndrome, a part of getting old, is it losing those connections? Is that a part of what growing old involves? Okay.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. And the light, as part of one of those techniques, emerging techniques of neurostimulation, and many actually are emerging that are at home techniques, and even this infrared light is suitable for at home administration, really open up a new field where we can jumpstart the brain, keep it active, and hopefully preserve those functions that you were mentioning. And not just memory, it's also mood and others.
yes, very, very important because I think a lot of people can identify maybe a loved one they've known that has memory loss, dementia issues, and part of that is the increased rates of depression and some of the mood. We call it lability, right? So the mood can fly kind of up and down unpredictably. Okay, so we've got this really exciting new technology that's shown promise. And you mentioned some of the conditions. Mention them again for us. The so far that
Yes.
the researchers have shown that this seems to be helping in.
Right. So it all started with the stroke. There were very large trials, and that was the reason behind it is because what happens when you have stroke is that ischemic stroke is so called is when you lack the oxygen, you lack the blood flow to an area of your brain. And now, if you have a technique that not only jumpstarts the brain, but actually delivers energy, because that's what the light does. Similarly to what happens with the plants, even we humans can receive small packages of energy through those photons that can be utilized by the cells.
Wow.
So that was the whole thing, and that was the obvious application that people started studying the stroke. Now, from there, it went to traumatic brain injury because when you have an injury, even if you don't lose a certain area of the brain, that area can be functionally affected. And
And
good.
sorry to interrupt, Paulo. Just for the people, the traumatic brain injury, like what, for the layperson, what kind of thing might that have been? Like a,
Right, it could be a car accident, it could be a fall, basically any head trauma.
okay.
So even if there's no apparent wound on the surface of your head, the shaking the brain could be enough to produce a wound to the brain or produce a alteration of the function of the brain. And so it was actually here in Boston, the Boston University, that this application in traumatic brain injury started, and then at Spalding Hospital. And this pilot study were quite encouraging. Interestingly enough, these studies in traumatic brain injury, in some studies from Dr. Marnie Nazer here in Boston in stroke patients, found that the language could be also improved in these patients. And now you realize that a language is a huge issue in many developmental conditions, including Down syndrome. So that's something that eventually led us to applying this light to Down syndrome. In between the two, we have been studying here at the Mass General Hospital at Harvard University this transcranial light for many other conditions, including major depression, bipolar disorder, and more recently, we're looking at mild cognitive impairment. So the very first signs of decline due to Alzheimer's disease.
Wow. Okay. So that's really exciting because obviously we know at the moment that for lots of these conditions, either we know the limitations of some of the treatments. So if we talk about the mood issues, well, we know the pharmaceutical treatments, they help some people and others they don't. Um, and it can be difficult when you have something called treatment resistance, right? You try all the medications and then you're sort of either on a sort of mixed cocktail or you're just told that's it, there's no help for you. This is exciting. This is a new technology that might be open to them. Let's sidestep for a minute because I've realized people are watching. Well, they're thinking, well, what the heck does this thing look like? Is it like something Dr. Evil has, like a big hat, or what does it actually look like to have photobiomodulation treatment? Like,
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I have your one light here. I
ah,
don't know if you can see it here.
yeah,
Try to be focusing. Okay. So it's very simple, and
okay,
you see that my hand here, it's comparable. It's a small light made of tiny little lights, and you place it over the head, and it's absolutely non-invasive and safe, and produces a tiny bit of warming,
okay.
and can produce a little bit of redness after the treatment.
Hmm.
But it's not scary at all.
I was just going to say that doesn't look, like a kind of striking fear into my heart. I think that looks really easy to sort of maybe try. And it doesn't involve a needle, so that's always a benefit, right?
Absolutely.
And
It's
go
Go
on.
ahead. No, I was thinking that, I was struck by what you said about the need out there, even for conditions that have some type of treatment. And there's a huge gap in between medication and the devices that are out there. Devices that are available now, whether it's transcranial magnetic stimulation or electroconvulsive therapy, are in-office devices, are devices that require multiple treatments, multiple visits in office. Some require anesthesia, some even require surgery. And so they require some type of neurostimulator like a pacemaker. So this is, in comparison, is something you take home and it's as easy as that. And so it's a huge gap that we're trying to bridge with this science.
Okay, so we're looking at like the exciting new technology, but like you saying, this is something which would be something people could administer themselves at home. They wouldn't need to go into the office again and again. Obviously, for the study, we're talking about something different, but that this is moving towards a treatment that people would give to themselves at home if they had one of these conditions that it showed it helped. That's exciting.
It is.
Yeah. Okay, so we've had a look and we can see what it looks like now. So I can kind of picture maybe what kind of treatment I would have. Would the way that you use those light heads be different? Like if I came to your clinic with depression, or say eventually my brother came to have the treatment and he has Down syndrome, would you put them in different places?
Yes, we would. So, for instance, for language in our Down syndrome study for patients who have this condition of Down syndrome, we would put all the lights on the left side, front to back, because we want to stimulate those language areas that are on the left side of our brain. However, for depression, we typically stimulate on both sides over the forehead.
Mm-hmm.
And for bipolar disorder, actually, we only stimulate the right side. So
Okay.
it varies, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. And I'm, from chatting to you over the years, I know you have some very intelligent people that are a little bit like computer programmers. They understand the wires in the brain and where they go, and they know that the light needs to go into certain areas to get those neurons connecting again and get that blood flow working again. So they make those plans, do they?
Yes, we're very fortunate. We work here in this facility of the Mass General Hospital that is all research, and we are here on the second floor. On the first floor, there are seven big areas of imaging where we do all sort of brain imaging, and that really allow us to make those connections, as you were mentioning, between areas of the brain that are functioning less, maybe having less blood flow, and areas that we can target specifically for the purposes of kind of jump starting, as we said. So yes, we're very much driven by science, and of course, the end goal is to bring this to people, bring it to your homes.
Mm. Okay, so I feel like I've got everyone should hopefully have a good idea about this new technology, PBM, we'll call it for short.
Sure.
And, like, let's think about why you could go and look at anything. You're very humble and kind person, but, you're a very eminent researcher at a really important hospital. How did you end up? Coming into our community and looking at whether this helps our community. Let's hear a little bit of the story for you.
Yes. So mm, there are a mix of factors. Some are personal. I have a nephew that has Down syndrome, and as I was interested in this field, and I was very much aware of the fact that this was a safe treatment. My nephew lives in Mexico, and we were going for a vacation with my family, and I broke one of our devices there. Not a research, a hospital device. It was a personal device, and I wouldn't be allowed to do that otherwise. Uh, and um, and so, my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law were interested, and they started using very tiny doses. And one day, my sister-in-law calls me, and she was kind of astounded, and she's telling me, my son just, I won't mention names here, but was, just called me and just was talking in almost a complete sentence. And this was a 5-year old who had a typical speech delay. It was like saying something like, um, you know, she was calling him and he was replying, "No, mom, watch TV." And it's like, and she was like kind of startled almost. And so that was definitely one moment, one haha moment where I said, well, this is really a lot of potential, for him, for others. And at the same time, a colleague in Italy, who's friend of my family over there, had heard of my research in depression and was very interested in these applications. His name is Dr. Piero Manno. So he went on purchasing some of his devices and using them in his clinic with also patients with Down syndrome who happen to be fairly young in their teens. And he noticed all sort of important benefits. Of course, these are very preliminary findings. He found they were more regulated in terms of mood, that they were more coordinated in terms of movements. They could speak better, and the family was reporting the same. And we ended up teaming up and publishing. So this is how it started. And from there was like, okay, how do we bring it into science? How do we make this happen? Because, case reports are very encouraging, but are anecdotal, and they could be biased, and we wanted something more.
Yeah. So for those of you guys out in the, audience who aren't involved in research, it is exciting when, you give someone something and it seems to help. But, the clever mathematicians out there in the world, they remind us that, this stuff can happen by chance. It could be that they were going to get better anyway. So that's why, the world of research exists, because we need to be able to see if it helps the number of people that we know. It's actually, this is no longer by chance. We know that this is, highly likely to actually be helping the person to get better and to have a beneficial effect. So yeah, definitely agree that the next stage to take those promising examples forward was the study. So, from our point of view, we are out in the community and we were contacted by a mom who's very active in the States and talks a lot about different promising treatments for the conditions that people with Down syndrome struggle with. She contacted us and had heard a presentation from Professor Margaret Naser, who is one of the people that was out leading the way, treating people who had traumatic brain injury, particularly in the veteran world. She worked at the veteran hospital, works at the veteran hospital, and she was one of the leaders. And she was telling a conference of people, adults and parents of children with Down syndrome about this new technology, and that maybe they want to look into it. And so someone let me know I needed to watch this presentation, and then said, actually, you need to contact this chap, Dr. Paolo. So you got an email from me not long after that saying, were you interested in looking at this in our community? And little did I know that your little nephew was already working on you in the background. He was in your heart, and he was getting your curiosity going, wasn't he? What, getting you thinking, could this work?
Absolutely, absolutely. No, it's been a really an important step for us, meeting the Down Syndrome Research Foundation. Again, I also want to tell something to you all, to the audience, about the struggles of doing research. There is a gap even in the research in between. When you find those preliminary indications that something might really be helpful, and you get really excited about it because we are clinicians, so we care about our patients, we love that work, and we want to see things develop for our community. And yet, when we go for funding, and we search opportunities to fund the research, we realize that there is a magic word, and that word is preliminary data.
Mm.
And so you need to have those convincing data when you go to the National Institute of Aging, when you go to the National Institute of Health, any of the major funding agency, they want to have some convincing preliminary evidence that federal money, taxpayer money, are going to be well spent. And that's where you all come in as a community, because you can tell the federal agency, like, yes, we made this happen. We have data. Focus on our community, focus on us now. We have data to show you that this is important, this matters, and this might be effective. And then that's when the national institutes take on, and that's really bridging the gap. And we are so grateful to the Down Syndrome Research Foundation and to all of you that have contributed and made this possible, that now we are studying this for people with Down syndrome.
Yeah, well, and we're so pleased that we could come together to support you guys. And something I'm really proud of as us as a charity is that we like to think outside of the box in terms of what we support and what we, will look into. And a technology like PBM, I think, a lot of, funders would just have said, no, no, you're not a pill, you're not a standard intervention. But the fact is, standard interventions for lots of conditions aren't working. We need to think outside of the box. We need to look to new areas and new technology. So, thank you for encouraging all of those people out there listening.
Lisa, I want to say something else to the audience, and I want to make a kind of a comment of what happens behind the scenes, because maybe people might be thinking, okay, well, so the Down Syndrome Research Foundation is giving money left and right. You know how many submissions it took us to get this going? We resubmitted to the Down Syndrome Research Foundation our proposal about 6 times. So, they are very careful about, the science being right. And
Mm.
they have been extremely cautious about making sure that whatever you invest, it's well spent.
Thank you. And we
I
can't get.
just needed to say that.
Oh, thank you, Paolo. We like these scientists, but we can't let them have an easy ride. We got to make them work for their money. And one of the things that, it's deep in the science of this study that, but one of the things that I want to encourage people is that actually we wanted those donation pounds and dollars eventually when they went across to you to go, as far as possible. And we worked hard with you and your team so that, say, hopefully not, PBM didn't change anything. Well, actually, we need to get more out of this study than just testing out this technology. And working with your experts in neuroimaging, so brain scan people and your language people that you guys have on your amazing team, you are going to get data out of this study that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So, information about the way someone with Down syndrome's brain works and understanding about language development in the group that you're looking at. It's going to be a useful study no matter what comes out of it. But we're very hopeful that the PBM, but we have to wait and see what the results show. So, that's why I was so pleased that you were not one of those researchers like hopefully they're long gone, but those people that say we don't want to talk to the funders. We just want to send you our really clever proposal and for you to give us lots of money. You were open to a conversation, and I think we really appreciate that about your team. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very kind.
Yeah.
And I want to emphasize what you said. Absolutely, this is quite a sophisticated study, thanks to also all the revisions and the generosity of your foundation, because we are looking at those pictures of the brain imaging across time, and we're looking at also pairing this information with the EEG, so with recording of brain electrical activity. And so it's I'm very hopeful, and as you said, this is helpful information no matter what.
Yeah. Now let's tell people a little bit about what. So the common thing when we do studies is we give the intervention. So normally we'll talk about it in terms of a medication trial because I think that's what people are used to. So I go to take part in a trial and I get put through a sort of like a lottery machine, and I maybe get given the real active medication or I may be given a placebo. And then they look at, does my depression get better? Does my leg work better? Or whatever they're looking to investigate. So what in this study with our adults with Down syndrome, what are you looking at to see if the photobiomodulation is changing?
Right. So we're looking at language. So we are testing language. So we are recording language while people read what we call a picture book. So there's a story made of pictures, and they're guessing this picture, from this picture, the story, and they're verbalizing, telling the story as they go. And we have specialized listeners that listen for content, listen for grammar, structure, vocabulary, and rate these tapes. And then they come with kind of a grading of language, and they realize whether there was an improvement or a deterioration or just no change. So this is really the primary outcome. Then from an imaging perspective, we're going back to that concept you had kind of pointed several times before of connectivity, brain areas that are connecting. We can see that when we take a picture of the brain. And the way we see it is because when two different areas light up at the same time, we know that's because they're connecting, they're talking to each other. And so that's certainly something we're looking at, and we're correlating those areas that are lighting up with the changes that we see in the language. And so that's really what we are looking at. And also we're looking at the brain waves. So we're looking at the activity as we record on the surface of the forehead and on the surface of the head altogether, those tiny little currents that are coming from our brain firing. So we put all these three dimensions together, and that's what we get the pairing of function and so brain function and behavior. So this is what we are looking at. And of course, there are these two parallel kind of intervention. One is the light, and one is no light, which is placebo.
Okay.
And I will say one more thing, that if people are now thinking, why should I do the study if, it's like a toss of the coin, I might just get nothing at all. Well, first of all, you're getting all the specialized care here at Mass General Hospital, and which is Center of Excellence. And you're getting the imaging, you're getting the neuropsychological evaluation, the language evaluation, but also anyone that doesn't improve in the study gets a chance to receive the treatment for sure for free at the end. So the studies are at no cost for it. So and there is compensation because we understand that people are busy, they have things going on. So there's compensation of about $1,200 per participant, and there's compensation for the family members that comes in as well, which is about the other $500. There's no cost for the study, and if they don't improve, they get the treatment for free after the study if they want.
Mm-hmm. And so there's someone interested in actually, is it open to all countries? And that's the only slightly tricky thing about being involved in this study is tell them a little bit about how often you need to see these patients.
Yes, so we see these patients during the 6 weeks of treatment 3 times per week.
Mm-hmm.
And we're very quick at delivering this treatment. In 1 hour, people can come in and out. They still have their day for themselves. So we're flexible. We try to accommodate their schedule. But of course, if they're not local, unless they are willing to fly and be here for those 6 weeks and plus minus sometimes before and after, then it would be hard to participate.
So it's probably easiest if someone lives nearby Boston or can get to Boston relatively easily to take part in the study. So we really appreciate all you Boston folks who are listening to us today. And we're very thankful that, you and your loved one is willing to take part in this study and help us learn more about photobiomodulation, but also how the brain works for people with Down syndrome. So do be sure to share if you know someone with Down syndrome who lives in Boston this video so they can hear about it and contact Paolo's team.
Lisa, if I may also, some people might be thinking, okay, why doing this international, Facebook Live? I think the point which I'm emphasizing with a lot of our participants is that sometimes people maybe were interested, but they couldn't get in the study, even if they were local, because it's important that certain criteria are satisfied to get into the study. And I reassure them that even if they were not in the study, they can make a difference. They can go and talk to their neighbor, they can go and talk to their friends and let them know, or in the media, that there is this study. And just by doing that, they can advance science. In the same way people are contributing to research with funding, they can advance the science. They can make this happen sooner for anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree with that. And, I think that for many years we haven't had viable treatments or things that we can suggest to adults and children with Down syndrome. So we're now at a point of change where there are very promising things on the horizon, and I think it's vitally important that we talk about it, that we share this information. Down syndrome isn't a static condition. Just like everything else, all of our genes can be influenced by lifestyle, environment, and certain treatments. So we've got to be actively involved in keeping healthy, but also keeping up to date with what's on the horizon. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that. It's so important. So, how I've put in the, chat, but just tell us, how do people learn about your study? How can they get in touch with you guys?
Sure. So they can basically call our numbers or email us, and they can get in touch. There will be someone either answering through emails or through phone calls. And the very first thing we will tell you, what the study is about, and we'll ask you a few questions to see from the very get-go if this could be a good fit or not. If it seems like a good fit, then there will be another call, which would be very similar to what's happening right now, a kind of a video chat where we'd say, conversation with me, and we'll go more in details through the consent of the study. One key element here is that this is voluntary. So even if you decided that you were interested anytime, you could decide that you're not anymore interested. So there's no binding, there's no contract, no binding agreement. So you can be in and out as you think most suitable to you.
And just remind everybody, what's the age range of the people that you're looking at?
So we're looking at people with Down syndrome that are between 16 and 35 years old.
Okay. And, just to reassure everyone that, one of the things that, I was very pleased to hear about was, that Paolo is very passionate about making sure that the actual participant, the person with Down syndrome, the adult, is consented. This isn't a situation where things are done to someone who doesn't want them done to them. So the person with Down syndrome is at the heart of the consent procedure, aren't they? And you guys work really hard to make sure they understand what taking part involves.
Absolutely. So there are two basic case scenarios. So one is the adult has their own legal guardianship. So they are their own legal guardian, meaning that they can make decisions. And so they will be the ones that will assess, will make sure they understand what the study is about. And if we deem that they have indeed what we say capacity to consent, so they're able to decide, they understand the pros and cons, then they will. And they will sign the consent, and of course there will be a family member around. If, however, the family member is the legal guardian, it's still in that scenario, we ask the person with Down syndrome if they would want to be in the study. That's called assent. Mm-hmm. And so if there's no assent, there's no research. So even if they are not the ones who are going to make the legal decision of being the study, without their agreement to be part of the study, there's no research.
Mm-hmm. That's really important. And I think, unfortunately, in the past, groups like those with intellectual disability have been, mistreated. So, I want to reassure everybody out there that that is not what goes on now within the research world. People with learning disabilities and Down syndrome are treated with dignity and respect. And, just like research for people like you and I, Paolo, it happens hand in hand with them. It doesn't happen to them. So that's really important that we understand that. Well, that's really exciting, and I know that you guys are, roughly about halfway point, are you, with your study?
We are, yes.
So there's still room for more people to get involved. So this is really exciting that people can still jump on board and be a part of changing the future. So what are the kind of potential gains that we're gonna learn from this study? What kind of things are you hoping that we'll uncover?
Yes. So of course the most important thing is, does the light help with language? Does the light help with cognition, with memory, with attention? And this is our primary goal. And from there, we want to submit a larger grant, as we're mentioning, and have larger studies to go on and validating this potential new treatment. So this is one key aspect. We also have very important questionnaires for the family members or caregiver, because we want to know a little more, our family interactions, our friendships, how is school going or work, did anything else change? We're interested in quality of life. We're interested in all these other things that really matter, because even if we need to narrow down to something to really make science happening. We want to have the whole picture. So we're looking at that as well. And then, regardless, as you're mentioning, we'll have brain imaging data and brain activity data that are specific to this population over time, that are correlated with their status or how they are doing, from a psychological standpoint. And those will be tremendous learning, regardless of whether the treatment is helpful or not.
Mm. That's really good. So there, we've got all these potential pots of information that we're adding to, we're enriching our understanding of Down syndrome even more. So I'm really excited to be able to share that with the world, and obviously this is because of the donors that have given their money or maybe left it in their will as a legacy because they wanted to see a better future for people with Down syndrome. So we're so thankful to everyone out there. So, we've told you guys a little bit about what you can do. If you're in the Boston area or if you know someone who is, tell them about the study. But even if you're not, spread the word. Tell people about this study so that they learn there's hope for new treatments and advances to help improve not only language, but also quality of life, right? Paolo's looking, did it make the loved one interact more? Did it make them want to, go out and do things, exercise, do more of the things that enriches our life? So we're going to be looking really in depth at PBM as a treatment. And you touched on it previously, but I think it's really important for people to realize that the big funders you mentioned, these big government funders, and we have ones in the UK, MRC and NIHR. It matters that you guys show that you want to know more about something, right? Because when they're deciding who are they going to spend the money on, because obviously all of these people out there in their condition groups are screaming for money. When you guys fund research and fund studies like this, you show them that people with Down syndrome deserve the newest treatments, the newest advances, and you want them. You're interested in them. You want people with Down syndrome to have better, fuller, richer lives. So it doesn't just fall on deaf ears. These big funders, they take notice. So just to encourage you guys that it does matter. It does matter. If we look at, for example, the autism community, they've got tremendous amounts over the last decade in terms of research funding because they have lobbied as a group in such powerful ways. So I just want to encourage you guys in the community that it matters. Your voice matters. And it means that today we can talk to a researcher who has been doing a study in our community looking at something that we care about. So that's
Lisa,
my little push.
I also wanted to say that it matters for the Down syndrome community, but it matters for everyone else.
Yes.
And we are very much linked, and it matters to the well-being of the families, of the overall community, and it matters in ways that also are understood by the scientific community, because unfortunately some processes like aging are accelerated in the Down syndrome, in people with Down syndrome, and and so whatever we discover now and that helps Down syndrome later on will help everybody else. So it's not a it's also an altruistic
Mm.
way to fund for the health of the larger community, not just the health of the Down syndrome community.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And we've got someone interested in when do you think the study will be published? When can we look out for that? No pressure.
Okay, so this is a question that every time that I answer this question, I I can't believe what I'm saying. It usually takes years to get there, and the reality is that it might take another year to get to complete and get the other half of participants, give or take, and maybe less. And then once you're done, you're starting cleaning the data and you're analyzing, and then you start to write up, and then there's this little struggle with the journals to see who is going to accept. And of course, the science is so has a very rigid process in which makes it eventually so reliable because there are so many checks and balances. It started with the Down Syndrome Research Foundation and wanting a specific protocol that was very rigorous, but then it goes on with the ethical committee, it goes on with the journals, and so in that process takes years.
Mm.
And but at the end, there's something that is reliable.
Mm. And I think that we can really speak to working with you over these years, your dedication. But we can also talk about our unofficial agent for research that Paolo will see at every holiday event, at every Christmas event. His little nephew that will remind him just to keep going and to get to the end where that study he can open the little journal, the journal, and see it there, that know that he has contributed to the betterment of our community. So
We
um,
are committed.
yeah, I have no doubt that you and your team. So just name some of the others on your team so that we can understand who's involved.
Sure. So we are working with Dr. Brian Scottco here at MGH, so the Down syndrome program. We're partnering with them. We're also working with Dr. Margaret Pulsifer, the neuropsychologist at the MGH Psychiatry, the Department of Psychiatry, Mass General Hospital, Harvard Community. And also we're working with Dr. Lena Beduto, who is our language specialist at the University of California, Davis. So this partnership with them has been really strong and very important. We have a vast team here. We're almost 10 people working the MGH brain photo biomodulation team. So there's really a lot of people and they're really working very hard.
Yeah, and I'm so thankful to all of you guys. I hope that you'll watch this back and see what a good job Paolo's done on his first Facebook Live that you've done.
It is my first, yes.
Well, good job. And just to just so you understand, well over 100 people it take them to get to this halfway point. So they work really hard talking to people and making sure that people understand what being involved will ask of them, and just being very careful and really respecting the people who are going to be involved. So we're very thankful to each and every one of you from the charity. So I know that we won't meet you all, but just do know that I would I would very much like to thank you guys for everything you're doing for our community and how carefully you're conducting this study. So thank you for being involved with this research chat, Dr. Paolo. And we are so thankful that everyone who stayed on to the end. And just have a look in the chat if you want to get involved. And just don't forget to share this post with your local group and anyone else that you think might be involved, and support research. So thank you so much for watching. And thank you, Paolo.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you to the community and to the Down Syndrome Research Foundation.
See you. Bye, everybody.